Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Coaching from the Couch. This is your Washington Commanders update, and I am your host, C Wall, checking in as I do each and every single week to give you the latest and greatest information about the Washington Commanders. As we get started, I have to go through all of the housekeeping items. So, we have a lot to discuss, but when do we not? So let me go ahead and get into those housekeeping items. This is a live Bowie television recording. Everything we say and do here, sure enough, ends up on your television screens on Verizon Channel 11 and Comcast Xfinity Channel 77 each and every single day from 1:30 to 2:30 all week long and on the weekends over the noon hour. If you are checking in from the Facebook Live, make sure you hit that love button and share this show with your Washington Commanders loving family and friends. If you're joining from YouTube, make sure you hit the thumbs up and hit the bell so you can get all of the notifications. You all, it's a lot to discuss. Say hello to Mama Waller. Say hello to Pops Waller. We're going to for sure get into the conversation. Although we know that the Washington Commanders made some moves on the day after Thanksgiving, I said, you know what? We will still reconvene on Monday. We will not do a reaction show like we did with the trades of Montez Sweat and Chase Young. I said, you know what? I was hanging out with the family and I said, we're going to wait until showtime on Monday to go through all of the Washington Commanders updates, get your live engagement, your live interaction with everything going on. Again, if you're just tuning in, this is from the Coaching from the Couch series, the Washington Commanders update. I'm your host, C Wall. This is a live Bowie television recording. Make sure you hit that love button and share this show with your Washington Commanders loving family and friends. If you're watching from YouTube, drop a fire emoji, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell so that I know that you are watching. So we're still gonna do what we always do, and that's starting out with my favorite game. And here's the reality. Just what's your one word? I'm not even gonna say what's your one word, John Adams, for how you felt after the game or how you felt about the news of head coach Ron Rivera relieving Jack Del Rio of his duties. I'm not even gonna ask you what's your one word for those things specifically, Mazdak. And I see, yep, shout out to Pops Waller as well, because he's gonna watch. What's your one word for all of it? Just all of it. Just the whole thing. And while you're dropping your one word, make sure you hit the love button and share this show with maybe it's not your Washington Commanders loving right now. Maybe it's your Washington Commanders frustrated right now. Maybe that's what it is. I see Cameron Mingo has chimed in, and his one word is done. I see Chase Dark Flame Gaming says one word here, bummed. So John Adams says his one word is wasted. Wasted. You can take that a whole lot of different ways. And Mazdak, same old. Same old. It continued to drop those one words in the chat. Listen, I'm proud. I don't even have anything to say at this point. I mean, I think we've used about every word between disappointed, frustrated, unacceptable, debacle. I mean, hey, depressed, angry, frustrated, We've used so many of these words to describe this season. And I will tell you this. And I had shared with you all on my page. I said, hey, whatever happens, don't let it ruin your day. Don't let it ruin your day. And I'm smiling here a little bit because while I said don't let it ruin your day, it definitely didn't ruin mine. It didn't ruin anyone else's that I know either. Well, that was there in terms of that was working. But it seems always like just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. Just when you think that what you're watching can't go down the hill any faster and have an impact so horrible that it just takes your breath away a little bit. Like, oh my gosh, what are we just when you think you already are expecting and you've predicted and have prepared yourself for what you're about to watch, I still find myself in shock of what could I possibly be watching. And I see John Adams' comment here that it's ruined his whole season. And I have several questions for you. Also, a lot to talk about. And when I'm going to share with you all, and you may have seen it by now, but I have to go back through all of the things to give the recap. And I'm going to share Coach Ron Rivera's after game press conference. I'm going to tell you, I said it on my page, but that may have been one of the worst Commanders Cowboys games I feel like I've watched in a long time. That was pretty bad. And when you have Dak Prescott on the sideline eating a turkey leg before the game is even over, I mean, how disrespect. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I am saying it was disrespectful. Not saying I wouldn't have done it, because chances are I would have. So it was just if ever you were going to feel like you didn't want to watch the rest of the Commander season, I would agree with you. I would also say there is some good football being played up the Beltway. Just saying. And I'm not saying that, let me be clear, because I've said that a few times, like, well, hell, they're still playing good football up the Beltway. And it's not so much of a switching teams. You all hear me say all the time, watch what other teams are doing. Watch how other people are playing, because that will let you know where your team truly stands amongst all of this. It will really tell you the truth on where the Commanders are when you watch other teams play. It is the truth. And when you see how other organizations operate, it lets you know exactly where the bar is. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to hate, but if you want to watch professional football being played, not saying you got to cheer, not saying you got to like the color purple. I mean, the movie, yes, not necessary, but just saying you can watch other teams play. It's okay. There'll be absolutely zero judgment from Seawall on that one. Aside from the fact that Bowie TV covers the Ravens as well. Small plug there. But I'm just being serious. And I'm going to share with you all the after game press conference with Coach Rivera. Put in the chat just your overall thoughts. The relieving of Jack Del Rio and Brent Weisselberger, just all of the things that have transpired from Thursday to today. Coach Ron Rivera being the defensive coordinator now and taking over those responsibilities. Drop your thoughts in the chat. The after game presser is about 4 or so minutes long, but you still have time to, while you're watching the presser, to get your Washington Commanders watching. I'm gonna find a word that's suitable versus loving for the time and place. Washington Commanders watching, family and friends, they might want to chime in and have some thoughts on where things are headed, where things currently are, and where things could potentially be headed.
What do you think? How are you feeling? How do you interpret what's happened out there?
Well, it was unfortunate. You know, we're in a game and we're fighting, we're battling, we're scrapping, and then we just basically lost control of it near the latter part of the third quarter. And you know, it just one of those things. You got to make some plays. Get to a work down situation, don't make a play. That's tough.
You guys came into this game as a clear underdog and struggling. Why did you decide to punt on those early possessions rather than perhaps setting an aggressive tone by going for it?
Mostly because of how the game was progressing. It was tight, it was close, so there was an opportunity. If we keep it tight and keep it close, the way we play down the stretch, who knows what happens. So until we got into, like I said, later in the third quarter, you know, that's what it was.
What'd you make the defense today?
Well, it had its moments, but you know, a little inconsistent at times. Third quarter came out, got some stops early on, and then, you know, unfortunately, like I said, it just got away from us at that point.
Are you worried about what could happen after this game, just in terms of job security or anything like that?
I've told you before, I'm not worried about anything. All I'm going to do is do my job and see how things go. That's the only thing I can do.
How the defense has kind of been doing this a lot this year, the big plays and all that. How surprised are you and disappointed that it hasn't seemed to have gotten any better with that?
Well, I know this. At one point today, you know, there were some good things that they were doing. And again, as I said, you know, it just got away from us a little bit later in the third quarter. And, you know, the biggest thing is we just got to continue to evaluate and work to get it corrected.
And in that evaluation, with I guess the obvious questions are any staff changes with that? Is that part of the evaluation with that?
I'm not going to get into any of that stuff.
Is there a time period where you do have to get into that stuff?
I'm not going to get into that stuff, okay?
Then just defensively tonight, is there something Dallas did particularly on the outside to attack the secondary that maybe was unexpected or surprising?
No, I think again we game plan them. I thought going into it, I thought we had some good things going, and unfortunately we didn't do the things that we needed to do.
Going back to the defense, Coach, specifically the pressure on Dak Prescott. Again, going back to what you did last week, we were able to get after the quarterback there for the Giants, but this week, no sacks on Dak. What did they do to make life easier for Dak?
Well, I think they mixed some things up. You know, they got the ball out of his hand early on. You know, they ran some play actions, ran some bootlegs, and you know, unfortunately, we just didn't get the pressure.
Coach, we talked earlier in the week about the Cowboys screen game. They were able to have some success tonight with it, and then also on the edges of the defense. Kind of, can you put your finger on what failed there?
Well, one of the biggest things, you know, is you got to set the vertical edges and keep everything contained, keep it inside. You don't let it get outside.
Coach, your observations of the game that Sam Howell had tonight.
Well, I thought Sam did some things. He was efficient early on. You know, made some really good decisions, got the ball out early. But you know, when you get into a position where you're trying to score, and they know you're trying to score, it gets really tough on you.
What happened on the fourth down where Jahan ran into Brian? What happened on the fourth down where Jahan ran into Brian?
Well, again, that's going to have to take a real good look at the tape to see how that all jumbled up. You know, I do know they got some penetration on that side.
If there are no changes, can players expect the results to change?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Take two more.
What's the conversation like with the team after that game?
It was tough. You know, solemn. You know, because there was a point, we came out and they were playing, giving ourselves a chance. But again, as I said, later on in the third quarter, it just got away.
Last one.
Coach, on the sidelines, some heated conversations between coordinators, or Jack Del Rio, the players, even John Allen got involved. I know you want to speak specifically to what was said, but can you kind of share the spirit of the conversation that were happening? Fair enough.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
So if you are just tuning in from the Coaching from the Couch series, this is your Washington Commanders update. I am your host, C. Wall. This is a live Bowie television recording. Washington Commanders loving, I guess. Washington Commanders watching still, I guess. Family and friends, hit the love button, share the show. Because let's talk. I want to start a couple places, and I'm writing my notes down here because why not? And drop some questions in the chat for me, you all. If you have any questions, please ask them. I have answers. Melvin Russ McCray put in the chat 2 years too late, talking about JDR. And hey, listen, I could have believed that some things and some changes were going to be made from a perspective of wanting to play better and wanting to win and wanting to move further had that move been made much sooner. 2 years would have been optimal. In terms of this particular year, after the Chicago Bears game would have made me believe that. Yeah, I would have been like, oh, coach knows he has bosses now. He understands the assignment in that he is someone that he must communicate with in order to make recommendations on how to move forward or what he would like to see happen or to be done. It's not just him with the autonomous decision-making authority. I would have believed things a bit more from a this season perspective had the message that came this past Friday come after the Chicago Bears game. Perhaps then it was still a do your job. From a player's perspective, maybe the coaches got, were felt like they were doing theirs and others were not. So I'll let that be there. Okay, it was a move and it was made and okay, but it was late in terms of if you were trying to seek changes and wanting to believe and having your words and your actions to match, a little bit too late there. Here's one thing I've noticed about Coach. He did the same thing when conversations and trade conversations were heating up and the rumor mill was really starting to spin. Whenever somebody would ask about it, he would say, I'm not talking about that right now. I'm not getting into that right now. Until it was like the final, like the day before, he's like, I think I have some updates for you on Wednesday. It was abundantly clear, at least to me, that there were going to be some changes made, that he was going to make some changes, and he was aware of that. Now, if you go back and listen and pay attention to what his response was in terms of his own job security, doesn't seem worried about that at all, not at this time, not at that time, I should say. But in terms of any changes that were of his decision-making authority, I've noticed whenever he says he's not going to talk about that and he has to repeat himself, then that always means he's going to do something. Always, almost always. So that was kind of my sign. If anybody would like to say goodbye to Jack, they should do it now while we're still in Dallas. That's how that went over. Have you all ever noticed when they lose, especially bad, which happens often, when coaches asked about being surprised about something that the opposing team did, he always says he wasn't surprised. They weren't surprised. Never seems to be surprised. Yet, the team looks totally unprepared for what's happening in real time on the field. I just wanted to say that out loud, to say that I said it, and also to say, isn't that interesting? Now, maybe it's not important, as Coach likes to say, but I do find it interesting that it's never a surprise of what these teams do, yet they're always unprepared to respond or even actively alleviate those things from transpiring in real time. May not be important, but it certainly is interesting. I wanted to comment, and I shared this with him directly, Sam Fortier's question about, well, if you don't make any changes, can you expect there to be any changes? And, Coach Rivera actually brought that up in his press conference on Friday, called Sam Fortier out by name, just like the question you asked me, Sam Fortier, can I expect there to be changes? If there are no changes, well, hey, I'm not saying, and I joke, transparency, I joke with Sam about this, like, oh, did you help Coach make that decision? No, he did not. Absolutely not. It was purely a joke. Think they did that to themselves. I want to go back to the last question that was asked by my colleague, David Harrison, excellent colleague of mine, that asked the question about what was going on the sideline and some things that were happening on the sideline. Love button, fire emoji in the chat if you heard that question and you saw Coach Rivera's nonverbal response to that question, where he didn't want to share any specific, he didn't want to get into it, didn't want to just, mute, and just shook his head. I had posted on my Facebook and Twitter because I saw what happened. I saw what was happening. And then my colleague Donna Hopkins grabbed her binoculars. She saw what was happening as well at one point. And so we were talking about it, Donna, David, and myself, because I was sharing with them, here's what happened. And here's what's happening. So if you've seen rumors about the coordinators getting into it, that was a total misconstrue of the question and the context of what was happening. That absolutely did not happen. After the first Cowboys touchdown drive, can someone put in the chat clarity? Because I want to go ahead and clear it up because I saw it. And so I was sharing what happened, but it, without the context, I'm looking at it and I'm looking with my binoculars and I'm looking up at the broadcast. So I can clearly see the broadcast is not capturing what is transpiring on this sideline, which was a bit more interesting than Dak eating that turkey leg, if I must say so myself. What was transpiring was this. After the Cowboys' first touchdown drive, Jack Del Rio was having a very intense conversation with Cody Barton, Jamin Davis, and Benjamin St-Juste. After that, there was some more conversations being had because, of course, the Cowboys now have gained some momentum. After that, Jonathan Allen was having some spirited conversation that wasn't necessarily intense, but it was, in fact, spirited conversation with his teammates on the sideline. Second point. Third point. With the 4th and 1, where Jahan and Brian bumped into each other, Coach, offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy had some reactions to that on the sideline. He was not happy. He was displeased. Those were the 3 occurrences that happened on the sideline. That while that question was asked, I know in some of the groups, and I think I saw on Twitter where it was totally misconstrued. To the coordinators were arguing, well, no. So clear that up, send that message. Seawall saw it all. That's literally step by step everything that was happening. Now, what I do want to bring your attention to is the way Coach responded to that question, because it was intense and it was spirited, and there was definitely some displeasure expressed across those 3 instances. Which leads me to this. I had come across some information, and you all do want to hear this. And I debated on whether or not I'd say anything. But why not? So love button, fire emoji, if you want to hear the information that came and dropped into my lap, because sometimes that just happens. What was shared with me, and this may not mean much, but what was certainly shared with me was that it sure felt like there was some bad vibes amongst the team Wednesday evening. It just didn't feel right. So I want to say that and couple that with, I know that my colleague John Kahn is also, reporting and sharing what he's there, as we all are, as we all who are there consistently and are there, we're all sharing. But that was some very direct information about Wednesday evening, that there was some clear, something just didn't feel right, and just bad vibes amongst the team. Not a lot of engagement from the team Wednesday evening. So I've talked a lot about Eric Bieniemy's approach and the intensity that he brings. And I know I've kind of coupled that with some questions, and folks may be looking for my response. And I've talked to my colleagues with Bowie TV, with Darrell Owen, shout out to Darrell, because I asked a question about how should Eric Bieniemy be evaluated this season. And really, I did that for a reason, in terms of this is his first season with Sam, all of that. How much does all of that matter in terms of how he's evaluated? But honestly, when you look at it, it's how much all of the coordinators and coaches to be evaluated on. And so I want to clear this up, because I'm going to say this out loud. And it was more so because I know that we've discussed, some of us have asked John directly, because we know what people are saying. And it was more so of they would like for Coach Rivera to take some of the responsibilities back. Now, this is not to say they don't want him to be a coach. This is not to say any of that, right? But that some players would like to see Coach Rivera take some more of these responsibilities back. Not getting into specifics about which of those responsibilities. Here's what I'll say. Here's what's actually disturbing, right? Because I want to go to this question that DJ is asking. Well, what will it take for him to be able to have, I'm assuming, a chance to be a candidate for the head coaching position? Now, well, let's be for real, right? If people got their eyes, there's a lot of issues here, because like I'm telling you, I know because of what was shared with me, there was some bad vibes. All right. It makes all the sense in the world based on the product on the field on Thursday. This team is defeated. They are fractured. It is it's some hurt stuff going on. Not getting into specifics, but what was shared with me based on what was going on Wednesday night and what the look and feel was Wednesday night, and what was shared with me was there was no surprise that that's what happened on Thursday because of bad vibes on Wednesday night. And yes, there was no blow up between JDR and EB. Lamar, you're going to have to listen to the show. You came in late, so you're going to have to back that up. That was a complete misconstrued lie. It wasn't even nothing. Nothing happened between JDR and EB, and that's real. Nothing at all. But definitely catch back up, because I gave very distinct, very specific, here's what happened on the sideline, because I was the one that saw it. So I was the one that shared it. Sam 48 saw it, and I saw it. And so you're hearing from one of the horse's mouths, like, this is what happened. Had no idea how that got misconstrued. But if it's one thing I can tell you all about, and I'm going to go back to this bad vibes and product on the field, is I'm glad that I'm one of the people that knows what's really happening, because I see how things can get misconstrued and be turned into something that is completely not, and how, quite frankly, flat out lies have been told. So this is why I thrive on authenticity and transparency and fact finding and dealing in reality, because a lot of this stuff is just not even, I don't even know where it's coming from. But I want to go back to the chance of Eric Bieniemy being a head coach on this team. If this is a big if, there are challenges with Coach Bieniemy, will he have a chance at being a head coach of this team? Now, this is me asking this question, quite frankly, without understanding or even knowing what the issues are. Here's what I do know. I do know that players previously wanted to know more about him, wanted to know more about why coach made the decision to give him a lot of the responsibilities that he did, because oftentimes what happens is, and we've seen this transpire before, is that head coach Ron Rivera will make decisions and then he will tell his players later. So I do know that there was a desire to learn more about Eric Bieniemy, learn more about his approach, learn more about why the changes were made, because those things were not shared previously. I do know that. Now, if there is in fact an issue with his coaching style or anything involving him, what do you do? And this is going to be a conversation that I'm going to continue to have, because here's the reality. We have to cover the team. I have to cover the team, right? And I am covering the team. And we can talk a lot about the actual game and analysis. But the reality is, this ownership group needs to be, in my opinion, already framing their vision for what they want this franchise to be. If this is a franchise that they want to see competitive and winning for the long term, then guess what? You already know the team's opponents through 2027. You know this. You know, we all know. This is public knowledge. We all know the team's opponents through 2027. That means you have to start planning now. You have to start planning now. You have to understand what your vision is going to be for today and tomorrow, because what you do today and tomorrow impacts everything you're doing going forward. All of it. So you have to sit and think, are these players that you see as a part of that vision? Does any of the coaches display a coaching style that you see is a trend in terms of what winning looks like for other organizations? What is going to be the balance in order to be competitive, winning football games consistently? Nobody out here is winning them all, but how do you become a consistent competitor in this league where you see the winning organizations are doing things now to get better tomorrow? They're always getting better, all the time. We see them do these things. I'd asked a question about, okay, well, hey, we know for a fact they need a new defensive coordinator because that job is empty. It's being held right now by Coach Ron Rivera. And we know that they need a new defensive back coach, okay? They're filling positions, but, hey, we know that because that's based in reality. Would Eric Bieniemy be considered a casualty potentially of a failed coaching staff, or would he be considered a barrier to success based on feedback from your players? I don't know the answers to those questions. I'm putting them out there for consideration. This is why it's so difficult to evaluate, truly evaluate. And I'm going to share some things about, how would you evaluate him? How would you evaluate any coach? Not just Eric Bieniemy. I asked about Eric Bieniemy, but how would you evaluate a coach? How? Really? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to wins and losses. You can only be safe, truly, in my opinion, you can only be safe in your job if you won the Super Bowl. If you didn't win the Super Bowl, you can go. Potentially. That may sound crazy, but that's fact. Because the goal should be Super Bowl. Now, there's always measures to this and process to this. I'm not saying go to Carolina Panthers route. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is this ownership group, it's not as easy as you think. Because what's really going on this team? If there are bad vibes and then you see the product, the season it's not gone well. This is just bottom of the barrel, actually. What do? Do you say, well, I'm going to take the player's perspective, or I'm going to take the coach's perspective, or how about you just have to set your vision for what you want? What is it that you want? And because right about now, are we seeing? And you all let me know in the chat what you think. Are we seeing a team that is basically being counterproductive because you don't like the approach of one of your coaches? I don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm asking a question. Because these are the things that if you're on the ownership group, now I need to understand what's happening here. And not only do I need to understand what's happening here, I need to understand what's happening here because I need to understand who's going to fit the vision for how we do things moving forward. And if there could be some, hey, there's enough blame to go around for real. Because at this point, I don't know if anybody I don't know if at the record the team is right now, if you can with confidence say, okay, this one can stay. Because how? Unless you go to an evaluation method, which would consider of a couple different things, right? When I asked this question, I'm pulling out some of the responses I really liked. And one of them was this one I really liked in terms of how you evaluate. And it was about Eric Bieniemy. But as I went in, I was like, well, wait, this could be for anybody, right? But Etienne Alexander says, okay, he should be evaluated on overall offense performance. I really like what he says here in terms of you compare last year's offense to this year's offense, meaning overall production. Also evaluate the last time this exact scenario took place, meaning first year starting quarterback along with first year OC, compare production to name a few. Here's why I like that, because that gets down to the numbers. Now, the season is different, right? So now then I would have to say, let me take this another step further. And now I would have to see, well, who are the consistent players through this point last year that was under a different offensive coordinator? Where are they this year in terms of production, in terms of play? And where were they last year? Where are they this year? I can say that. We know this point last year, Sam Howell hadn't even touched the field. So that's one of the things. But when you're talking evaluation and getting down into the numbers, I'm going to be real with y'all. A lot of people giving their opinion. And I'm like, you can't, no. Because the only other numbers you need to go on is wins and losses. And this is why I said, can you really give anybody a great assessment? Maybe individually, right? But if we're just doing this at wins and losses, I mean, who getting above a C? C+. Is anybody getting above that? Truthfully, I'm just being honest. As a unit, what can you get? As a whole team, what are you going to get? Being fair. Because if everybody was performing B or above, record might look different. And that's meaning all parties involved. So being able to look at those numbers and see those comparisons, that's key. Now, I already told Mazdak that I loved his response. Simple question. What are the categories? What should he be evaluated on? Again, going back to, truthfully, yes, I'm asking about Eric Bieniemy, but these then are categories that can be applied to anybody, right? So in this case, though, we're talking offensive performance, but depending on whomever, you can, if you're talking about the running backs, you can talk about a position coach, you can talk about that position's performance, right? Overall player development, again, that's something that's applicable even to position coaches. Now, the next one, in-game decision-making, that's not applicable to your position coaches, right? That really comes down to your coordinators and your head coach. Right, that comes down to them. In-game decision-making, game planning, all of those things, those types of adjustments. Team discipline and execution, leadership and culture, adaptability and innovation, communication and collaboration. I'm going to tell Mazdak, I don't know if he's still watching live. If he's not, somebody tag him, give him a high five. Here's why I love this, because when I asked that question, most people only talked about football. That was it. Their opinion of the run game and this and that. You are in a leadership position. It takes more than running plays to be a leader. And here's why I'm concerned, and I'm sharing this out loud. Something is, in fact, off with this team. Something is off. If there's an issue in one of these other areas, team discipline, execution, leadership and team culture, adaptability and innovation, communication and collaboration, if there is a challenge in those very key areas to being a leader, I'm going to go back to DJ's question and I'm going to say, I don't know if he gets a fair shot at the head coaching position. I don't know. Because if this in fact are players that, hey, let's be clear too, that some of these players are players he inherited. Most of them are, right? So they are used to a different culture. They're used to a different communication style. If these people have an issue, then how do you rank? Because at that point, it has nothing to do with the game. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Now you got to make a hard decision. And this is why I say researching I'm not waiting until I have a general manager in place and a head coach, a general manager to pick a head coach, to pick all the scouts and the talent evaluators and everybody else to be in place for me to research what are the winning organizations doing, the top players in the league, who drafted them. I asked another question, and this was by design as well. I said, who are your favorite players in the league? Not from your favorite team. Who are your favorite players? Some people had long lists. Some people had shorter lists. But at the end of the day, if I'm a part of this leadership team, I want to know who found them. And I want to know how they did it. What was your approach? That's part of research. That's part of understanding your landscape. All of the bowl games, all of the senior bowls, all of those opportunities would be missed because, truth be told, you would want, and I've said this on the show before, whomever you would want, hopefully, is playing well into January, hopefully even February, right? By rule, you can't necessarily interview. You can't do a whole lot, at least like during the regular season. And you can have conversations, but you gotta be kind of cool on some of that stuff, right? Really can't interview and really get going until your season is over. If this leadership team, if this organization, if this ownership group waits, you already late. Because, hey, listen, everybody knows the hierarchical order. That's not new news. But what I think may be new news is the fact that the best organizations are trying to get better every single day. They're not waiting. You want to know the result of not researching and not trying to get better and thinking and being complacent in the now? It has gotten the Washington Commanders, Ron Rivera, as the defensive coordinator. That's what not researching and preparing and planning. Anything can happen. Aside from firing, somebody could get sick, somebody could die, anything can happen, and you don't have somebody who could come up through within and be ready to go. I need to know today. You have the schedules through 2027. You know who you're playing. You may not know which weeks you're playing, but you know who you're playing. And I'm gonna tell you something else. This ownership group this gonna be hard. And that's why I asked the questions of what are you evaluating? Because it's not until you get into it, not until you're still talking to people, that you really understand all that goes into evaluating. Because here we have, and everybody's hollering and screaming, hey, Eric Bieniemy need a shot at head coach. But then you got rumblings and rumor mills like players want Ron Rivera to take some of his responsibilities back. Wait a minute. That is a challenge. Because who do you believe? How do you truly assess? And based on who do you believe, how do you really truly assess? That is then, I'm checking the vision for what this organization needs to be like in the short term and in the long term. And if you don't fit, then you're out. But you can't just write off player feedback, can you? You can. You absolutely can. But is that a good thing to do? Because oftentimes in leadership as well, and in any evaluation capacity, a good measure, a good process to do that is you have your leaders evaluate you, you have your peers evaluate you, and then you have the people that report to you evaluate you. There's 3 different levels in the chain that gives you your marks on evaluation. And I'm going to shout out NASDAQ again because, hey, the game matters. In true facts, they could say they, meaning the ownership group, can say everybody can go. Everybody, literally. Or they could say, okay, here's the pieces that fit the vision for where we're going to go, what we want to do. And we also have to consider, are you doing full rebuild or are you being aggressive up front? And if you're going to be aggressive up front, then that means you have to find people that fits your culture now. Don't try to get them and then sway them and change them and turn them into somebody that they're not. You're going to have to be that when you interview them, when you're scouting them, when you're watching them, when you're going to their games. I mean, what are they supposed to do? Everybody's like, no, they got to get a GM first. Yeah, we know all that. But so what they supposed to do? They're supposed to tell all their scouts out every single week in every region for every team. So what they supposed to pull everybody and tell everybody come back home? We're not scouting. We're not looking for no more people. We're not doing anything. Oh no. You have to, because I will tell you all, if you all ever, I don't think I've ever probably lost it on the show or anything of that regard previously. I don't think so. I like lost it, like had a meltdown. But if ever I were going to, it would be if I found out that the organization, the ownership level was not doing research. I would be livid. But I already know that's not true, so y'all don't have to worry about that. But I just want to explain to you all that research and trying to get better is always happening. Whether it's on Front Street, whether or not somebody has put together a statement and said, hey, let's go tell the fans this. No, it's always happening. Whether or not what they decide to do, who knows? But I already know that's not happening. But you should expect and want the organization to be always researching and figuring out how to get better at every single position, right? I mean, Eric Bieniemy said it the best, in my opinion, a few weeks ago at the beginning of the season. You're dealing in a business that it's a hiring sign outside every day. Every day you are auditioning for your job. No one should feel safe. No one should feel secure. No one should feel like, hey, I'm good. Because you're not. Unless you won the Super Bowl, maybe. If you didn't, you auditioning for your job every single day, which requires me and everybody else, hopefully, you all as well, understanding what's happening in the industry. Aside from the Commanders, who's still watching the Washington Commanders update, drop in the chat, who are your favorite? You've already told me your favorite players. I've already told y'all, find out who found them. Find out who found them. Who found them? Because that's important. It's very important. That is an important point. Who found those people? Who found them? I need to know that. Drop in the chat who your favorite teams to watch play are. Because at this point, it can't be the Washington Commanders. That might be your favorite team, but it may not be your favorite team to watch right now. You have to have another team that you like, daggone it, they're good. That's some good stuff right there. Being totally objective. Drop in the chat who are your favorite teams to watch and why, and how these teams are consistently getting better, and who they have. Teams always are trying to get better every single day. They're not waiting for the walls to come tumbling down to not get better. They shouldn't be. Good teams don't. Good owners don't. Now, they may not be making Carolina Panthers moves, but you got to be able to learn from what your peers across the league are doing. I'll leave you all with this. There's a lot of pieces here that I believe have contributed to the demise of this team. And I'm going to use something that I've used in the past. And that is look at the common denominators and look at what is different. Look at where the common denominators are. Look at things that are different. Oftentimes where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, there's some instances, like I said earlier, where things get out and it gets misconstrued or it's a flat out lie. And I'm going to just say that right here on this show, or if you talk to me, I'm going to say that's not even true. They don't believe that. I will say it's not hunky-dory. It's not at all. And it will be interesting to see what this ownership group stamps as the vision for the future and what they want it to be. And let me say this, because I see, Nasdaq, your comment here about you be worried if it was. Here's where I want to highlight. No, it's not hunky-dory. How would it be based on how you're losing? But if there are players that want Coach Rivera to take some of his head coaching responsibilities back, that should raise some concerns in different ways, for sure. So we're going to keep watching 6 more weeks. Yes, there's 5 more games. They got a bye in there, but we're talking about the Miami Dolphins, then the bye, then the Rams, then the then the Jets, then the San Francisco 49ers, and the Dallas Cowboys. And we're looking at a team that has not won one division game all season. That's pathetic. That's really pathetic. It's pretty bad. And we're also not seeing a team that's getting better either. They're actually getting worse. So it's a long way to go. And maybe they'll show up with Coach being the defensive coordinator. Maybe they'll show up better, since there are so many players that love that man. They love Ron Rivera. I have told y'all this. I have said this to you all. They love Ron Rivera. Absolutely. The team loves him. Not a negative word about Ron Rivera. That's facts. So this will indeed be interesting, and this ownership group has a very tall task ahead of them. As we continue to track the season, we'll be talking a lot more, and we're going to keep going back to the evaluation criteria, and we're going to keep going back to what we think. And I say we because I'll be pulling Darrell in. Tell Karita we're going to pull her in too, because she's going to keep us in the know. We'll do a separate segment on Ravens and all those topics as they continue to play, and make sure we're tapping to that fan base as well. But we got to start looking at what else is out there from a picks perspective, from a you name it perspective. It's a strong possibility that they all go. And then there's a strong possibility that some stay. Who that some are remains to be seen, right? So it's still a very long season, because that research piece is huge. And I'm going a different route with this. I'm not necessarily going with the household names that everybody knows. I'm not looking there. I'm not looking there at all. We're seeing a shift in the league, and I think that this ownership group needs to be on top of that shift for sure, because the Commanders are already so behind in that area, in the trends, in moving forward, in what's truly winning football games. So more to come on that. Extensive material on that that we're building and research, because hey, maybe I'll pass a note over to Magic, like, hey, read this. You never know. All right, you all. Try to be strong, because this is rough. You all be well. Thank you, as always, for watching. Again, this was from the Coaching from the Couch series, the Washington Commanders Update. I am your host, Sewall. You can catch this show each and every single day on Verizon Channel 11, Bowie Television, and Comcast Xfinity Channel 77 from 1:30 to 2:30, and on the weekends during the noon hour. You all listen. Try to stay level, but definitely start paying attention to what some of the other teams are doing and being successful at. I think you're going to want to pay attention to a lot of that starting now. Talk to y'all soon.